have their own ways of encouraging or not press freedom. Valentina Pop, what does this say about the role of the European Union and what because they obviously believe in a broader standard?
Sorry, could you just repeat that? I'm sorry.
Yes. What is the role of the European Union in this controversy, and what does the very existence of these protests say about the
Right.
EU?
Right. Well, the EU is not just one big block or decision-making body, unfortunately or fortunately, depending how you look at it. I mean, there were several reactions in the European Parliament. That is the elected body where people are being elected from all member states. The reaction was fierce, and actually, when Mr. Orban presented his presidency program in the Parliament, he got into a very, very fiery debate with the parliamentarians who were all criticizing him for this law, and he felt the need to defend the honor of the Hungarian people because what he thought was a criticism against the democracy and the foundations in Hungary.
I understand that one of the parliamentarians referred to him as the Hugo Chavez of Europe, which was quite an inflammatory characterization.
Which for an anti-communist defender and fighter that, as Mr. Orban was probably a big offense. But from the other institutions like the European Commission, which is the regulatory body who looks at the way countries comply with EU law and the respective directives and all those legislative packages that are mandatory for each member state, of course the reaction was more tempered, and they just looked at the law itself and at what it breaches or what provisions are controversial, and that's why they just issued recommendations. They've expressed their concern, and they're working with the Hungarians to correct that. But what I wanted to say is that in the European Union, there are also member states who face actually similar problems with media regulation and governments trying to regulate media. As one of my speakers has said, it's a dual heritage. It's also the communist heritage where media was seen as an extension, an arm of the government, and not so much a watchdog and something to hold politicians accountable for what they are doing. So this whole mentality change has still perhaps not been accomplished in all the countries, especially in Eastern Europe. But also there is the problem of media concentration and ownership, which I think if the Hungarians are now changing the laws that are 10 or 20 years old, they should look at how to protect journalists from such dangers like media concentrations, like politicians or business people trying to influence the content of media. So that's where the regulation should focus on.
I want to make sure we get the Hungarian perspective here in the interest of balance, perhaps. Ate Lamang, please tell us what you're hearing, and does your audience perhaps feel as strongly about this law as do the journalists themselves?
Well, I have to tell you that I work for the Hungarian radio, but actually I'm suspended because December the 21st, just after the media legislation was approved, we kept 1 minute of silence as a kind of protest against the media law in my morning show. So in fact, I'm not working. So I really know what the feedback of a lot of people is, because a lot of people write to me on my Facebook page, and I have a lot of Twitter messages. So I know that a lot of people in Hungary do not agree with this media law and would like to influence the government and the political elite to change this law. And what I would like to add to what we just heard is about the role of the European Union, that the European Union will revise this law from the viewpoint of common policies. Certain EU directives are important in this matter, but I don't think that the European Union will revise this law from the viewpoint of the basic principles of the European Union, the so-called EU charts, because this would be a very dangerous game probably for the European Union if they open this debate about how member countries respect basic rights, basic fundamental human rights. It can pose a lot of problems with several member states. It's enough to refer to how in certain countries homosexuals are treated, in EU countries, or immigrants are treated. So probably the European Union will only revise this law from the viewpoint of common policies. What I would like to tell you because of this is that this is a law which has to be changed by Hungarians. We have a constitutional court. We have public reaction to this legislation. So if the constitutional court will revise this law and will stipulate that certain points are not acceptable, the government will have to change.
Let me ask.
The public reaction is very strong. They have to change. So this will be up for the Hungarians to change this law.
Let me. We didn't realize we were talking to an early victim here, and Stephen Ellis. What does IPI say about this approach?
Well, we would actually prefer that the Hungarian parliament change the law and that it be a change brought about organically by Hungarians on the ground. Nevertheless, we find this very troubling, especially when countries agree to join the EU or seek to join the EU. They have to meet certain benchmarks. They have to hit certain standards before they're allowed in. One of those standards is freedom of the press, and it sets a very dangerous precedent when countries join the EU and then revert back or take steps to interfere with the freedom of the press. When you sign up for the EU, you sign up for EU values. There's serious questions about whether this law is in accord with those values, and it just goes to show that even in the heart of Europe, we still have to be vigilant about freedom of the press. Gerfried
Sperl, I wonder, as the former editor of Der Standard and and one of its columnists, if you agree that perhaps there should be common standards across the EU and across the world, or whether this is a matter of national interest.
I think it is partly a matter of national interest, of course, but we have regulations in the economy. We have EU regulations of public traffic. So we need really regulations, basic regulations of not only of the media markets, but also of securing the freedom of media. I think there should be some EU, as I said, rules, and within those rules there should be, as in other branches, there should be a national possibility of special architecture. What I wanted to say in addition to that, concerning the actual situation where the government of Hungary was advised to present its proposals for changing the media law. One should remember that at the beginning of the week, Viktor Orban held a speech to the nation where he declared that there will be a new constitution for Hungary. So we have to look very close at those developments, because if you are a pessimist, you could pretend that there should be possibly a line of authoritarian government practice, which could be developed concerning this new constitution in the philosophy, within the philosophy of the media law. So I think we should be not only watchdogs, we should very closely observe the development of democracy in Hungary, because this is not only a Hungarian situation and Hungarian example, it is a European example.
Stephen Ellis, could you give us some more examples of countries where where the trend towards these restrictive media laws has been lately evident?
Well, there's a number of countries around the world. We're concerned specifically, you have to just draw this distinction between the EU and the rest of Europe. In the EU itself, you have significant problems with conflict of interest of media ownership in Italy, with the prime minister, who's prone to outspoken behavior, owns 80% of the media. We've had reports.
This is Mr. Berlusconi.
President.
Yes.
Yes. The president seeking to use state resources or elements of the state security services to identify sources providing information to the press on corruption. We're concerned about sweeping media laws like this as well, but there are a number of other issues. Impunity for journalists. Press freedom is really a fundamental element of democracy. Without a free flow of information, citizens cannot make an informed decision, and we feel laws like this have no place in Europe or anywhere else.
Valentina, I want to give you the last word here. Can you just say to us briefly what you think is going to happen with the rest of Mr. Orban's presidency? Surely it can be no worse than Mr. Berlusconi's presidency a couple of years ago in terms of media issues.
Yes. What I believe, I think that they will make some minor changes, but just as Mr. Monk from Hungary has said, the fact that the EU is only able to correct mistakes or provisions of the regulations which are not in line with some EU laws, but not on the fundamental question of freedom and media freedom. I think that is
for example, energy production.
Challenge. Yes, that is a big challenge for the EU, especially since it has a commissioner for fundamental rights, and we've seen her clash with the French government, but in the end, no action was taken against
I'm afraid
her.
we're going to have to make that the end. I want to just add one final personal thought. Although scores of journalists die each year, the most pernicious threat to press freedom is self-censorship. What journalists fail to report, whether out of patriotic or nationalistic beliefs, or the threat of lawsuits, jail, or fines. It's a largely invisible threat, but a very dangerous one. Thanks to our guests, Valentina Popp, Stephen Ellis, Gerfried Sperl, and Attila Mang. Our director is Travis McMillan, audio by Pat Akers. The producers of Global Journalists are David Cawthon, Ryan Kress, and Jessica Popovic. Our video producer is Tim Wall. Rebecca Wolfson is executive producer. Stephanie Tabor is the production assistant. This is Byron Scott for Global Journalists, reminding you that you can download, view, or listen to this show, plus additional features by going to globaljournalists.org. Thank you all very much.